Do you wonder if you're the best version of yourself? This is the question we seek to answer in this podcast. We reveal information that helps you recover your health and become resilient. Modern life makes us fragile. Our diet, lifestyle, and environment set us up for failure. We do not accept this. We seek optimization. We strive to become dynamic. Hey, Dr. Chris here. What's going on? Today I want to talk about something I kind of hear a lot, see a lot. This complaint of the back hurting from lifting, particularly usually deadlifts. Also not being able to feel your glutes in a deadlift. I just want to talk about what you should expect, because we have this weird idea that the front of your body is supposed to get sore, but the back's not. We're like afraid of spine, right? Anything near the spine is not supposed to hurt. Well, there's muscles that line your spine, and when they get tired, just like any other muscle. So I see this all the time. I have someone deadlift for maybe their first time. I even tell them to expect some soreness, and then they come back, oh, that killed me. My back was really bothering me and I was like, well, how long did it last? Like, oh, about a day or two. I'm like, well, that is delayed onset muscle soreness. That's typical. It's supposed to do. That's a sign that you did some work. Of course, we don't want to get you so sore that you can't move. But generally what's happening is you probably never deadlifted or rarely deadlift. And then when you go, so the erector spinae, all the muscles that line the spine, they become deconditioned. And we know this from MRI studies. We know that when we see the word fatty infiltrates on an MRI, that is highly associated with back pain. What that means is instead of having muscle, you have, well, not just fat, but you're basically, fat is infiltrating the muscle because the muscle is not very strong, right? So we're not trying to lift past your capacity, but we're just trying to stimulate those back muscles to start to grow so that you can tolerate more activity. So I guess one of the expectations people have is that they're going to feel deadlifts in the glutes. And it is a glute exercise. It's a hamstring exercise. It's even a calf exercise. It's a whole posterior chain. You're lifting something from the ground, pulling up, so your whole backside is working. But I think people have this expectation that they should feel it strongly in the glutes. There's a couple reasons you might not feel it, and I'll tell you one of the reasons it's not. You don't have deadbutt syndrome. You don't have amnesia of the glutes. Those terms, physical therapists kind of hate those terms because it's not like you don't know how to contract your glutes. If you don't trust me, just lay on your back, put your hands under your rear, and just clench your glutes. Do you feel your glutes squeeze? The answer is probably yes. Maybe not very strongly. Maybe they're a little weak, but that doesn't mean you don't know how to use them, or you've got amnesia of some sort. That's kind of ridiculous. Unless you've had a stroke and you have no neural connection to the glutes. The glutes work. So what is going on? Well, one thing could be is that your back may be weaker in comparison to your glutes. So when you're lifting, sort of the weakest link in that posterior chain is what you're going to feel first, right? So if the back muscles are weaker, you lift whatever weight you can tolerate. Your weakest link may be the back muscles, and so you feel the back before you feel the glutes. So that's one thing that may be happening. The other thing is you have to look at the action of what the glutes do. So we're talking mostly glute maximus, right? That does hip extension. So hip extension is your leg. It does other things too. That's its primary function. So when you're walking or running, the trail leg is going into hip extension. So picture your femur moving backwards, or maybe it's easier to visualize your knee moving backwards past your pelvis. So if you're doing a hip flexor stretch, that is hip extension. So if you think of the movement of a deadlift, you're starting from the opposite direction, starting from pretty much deep hip flexion and standing up to neutral. So you're only really doing maybe 75% or less potentially of that range that the muscle can do. So it's kind of like doing a partial bicep curl. You're just not going to feel it as much as if you did a full bicep curl. So option one is that maybe your back is weak in the glutes. Option two is that you're just not getting to end range hip extension. And so there's that cue of kind of pushing your hips through, which I don't love, by the way. It's just kind of a weird, awkward movement. I think that's the idea of where that cue came from, is to get more hip extension, to get more glute engagement. But we're talking a few degrees. I don't think it's going to be very significant. That can kind of irritate a lumbar spine if you've got any stenosis. That tends to happen more in the older population. What I think might be better if you really want to feel the glutes is you do something like a standing clamshell or a reverse hyper, where you can really push your femurs past your pelvis so you get a fuller range of motion. Then you'll probably feel the glutes more. The other thing that I see daily, and I would call it like epidemic levels, is lacking hip extension. So one thing is to like move into it, but if you don't have access to that position, it's going to be really hard to contract the glutes into that position. So in other words, your hip flexor is really stiff. Right? This is a societal thing. I'd say 9 out of 10 people I test, and I tested just about everybody on this, they're stiff in their hip flexor. Right? And it's just gotten worse since pandemic. Sitting creates hip flexion stiffness. And whatever a muscle does, it limits the other side. So a hip flexor being stiff limits hip extension. So over time, people tend to get more sedentary and tend to do a lot more sitting, and the body adapts to whatever position you put it in. I mean, we can see that with shoe wear. You wear a tight shoe with tight toe box, your toes are going to tend to get mushed together even when you take the shoes off. So the body is constantly turning over cells, and new cells respond to the stimulus that are applied to them or not applied, and they start to adapt to the position that the strain is under. So if you're sitting, 40 hours a week in front of a computer, over time, if you don't take time to go the opposite direction, your body's going to naturally adapt to that position. And then what happens is you become really stiff in the hip flexors, and then you can't access full hip extension. This is where I love the idea of reverse posturing. So, if you're sitting in flexion all day, spend at least a few minutes a day going into extension. I think this is where people find a lot of help in yoga. That cobra position, that's a lot of lumbar extension. Or if you even just lay on your stomach and do Supermans, lifting the legs and arms up off the ground, that's basically reverse posturing. Or the kipping pull-ups that you see in CrossFit, there's a lot of sort of global flexion and extension of the body in that swing. So how do we fix all this? First, start off with a little reverse posturing, depending on your day. Stretch or mobilize your hip flexors. So the couch stretch is kind of the classic one that Kelly Starrett made up. It was a great one. Make sure to get active in it too. Don't just passively stretch. That only gets you so far. Your nervous system will not keep any flexibility gained from stretching until you move at the end range. That's what stiffness really is your nervous system not feeling safe at the end range, so it contracts a bit. It's a protective mechanism. So if you stretch and say you gain 5 degrees of hip extension, then move through that motion. I personally like doing Bulgarian split squats using both legs, so you activate the hip flexor in the deep extended position. That way you get to keep some of it, because then the nervous system learns how to be strong at end range. Then you can go into your deadlifts. I think that's a good way to start. But then you want to manage your expectations. You don't necessarily going to feel it strongly in the glutes, but you should feel in the back. You're lifting with your back. That's what a deadlift is. So your back is supposed to get sore. That's the main purpose of a deadlift in my mind, is to strengthen your back. When you get sore the next day, don't freak out. Muscle pain can be real and can not feel so great. But if it's lasting only a couple of days, then it goes away. That's great. That's sort of goal achieved. That's a eustress. That's the right amount of stress that you apply to your tissue to build its capacity, and it's rebounding back stronger. That's what you want. Most spine issues do not like extension, so the opposite direction. So things like stenosis, facet irritation, things like that are from the other direction, not from flexion. So the one thing that can happen sometimes with flexion is disc issues, right? But it doesn't happen that often. If you've got an old herniated disc, well, let me just start off by saying the primary mechanism for a disc injury is overloading the disc through both flexion and rotation. We call it BLT, bend, lift, and twist. So if you do a bend, lift, twist outside of your capacity and you feel a pop and you get sudden burning down one leg or numbness, that is a sign of a potential disc injury. Not a rule, by the way. There's other things it could be. And I want to be careful to say that it's not, that bend, lift, twist is not necessarily a movement you should avoid. In fact, I think you should train that movement. You just have to do it in a very stepwise progression so that when you're being a human and you do have to bend and lift and twist something that's a little heavy, you don't herniate a disc. So it's good to expose your body to sort of all positions. I don't think there's any bad positions for the body. I think there's only positions that you're not ready for. So that's it. That's my tips. Spend some time reverse posturing, whether that's a cobra position or like Superman. Mobilize the front of the hip, aka the hip flexors and the quads too. And then basically strengthen everything. Expose your body to things. Do it in a smart way, in a progressive manner, so that you're ready and resilient for all things in life. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are meant to do. What does this mean? It means exposing yourself to difficult situations so you become resilient. If you need help building resilience, check out our flagship program called Physiologic Flexibility. This is a 3-month do-it-yourself program that teaches you how to maximize your homeostatic regulators, such as your pH, blood glucose, O2 and CO2 tolerance, and temperature. We give you specific action items through the program with the goal of becoming anti-fragile. If you want to become the inspiration for your friends and family, this is the program for you.